welcome to episode 4. I want to say I stopped counting after a while because Anthony wouldn't let me do the part 1 and part 2 thing. So I think this is episode 4. We'll fix it in post probably. But welcome to episode 4 of the Audio Discourse. Of course, I'm your host. Today we're talking about everybody's favorite IEM, the QDC VX. I'm just kidding. We're talking about everybody's favorite Korean IEM, the Hidition Viento. But of course, let me introduce my usual co-host. He thinks the Viento is so nice, he bought it twice. How are you doing today, Anthony?
Good morning. How are you guys?
Are you ready to defend your baby
There's no
against
need
the
to
shady
defend anything.
Singaporeans? There isn't? You sure?
Nope.
All right. Next up, it's Ken. I heard once that he killed 3 people in a bar with a fucking pencil. How are you doing today, Ken?
Great.
Are you ready to shit on his favorite baby, Ken?
I think so.
You think so? All right. Last but not least, he quit audio so many times I can't even count. Here's Toranku for Toranku Reviews. How are you doing, Corn?
Hello, what's up?
All right. So I think since Anthony, you're the only Viento owner here, and you actually, obviously, for anybody who hasn't read Anthony's Viento review, which is pretty good, I want to say, you can go read it. But without going into too much about it, could you just kind of talk to me about how you got the IEM? Like, you obviously didn't heard it because you were in the States. There's no demo unit, so you blind bought it and you bought it twice. Can you tell me just a little bit about that little process there?
Yeah, so it's not something that you normally hear about. Small company in South Korea. So I guess I first heard about it through Critical. He posted, well, he's been talking about it in Discord for a while, and then he posted a review about it on his website, which I believe he had listened to once many years ago, really liked it, and then gave it a really good score, and then took it off because he forgot what it sounded like. And then he borrowed a friend's unit locally, and then re-listened to it and loved it again, so he ended up giving it a rank and reviewing that unit. So that's kind of how I found out about it. And then I don't know, it's been stewing on my mind for a while, but given the difficulty of ordering it and whatnot, and not being able to actually listen to it, I kind of hesitated to listen to it or to buy it for a while. But if you look at the measurements for it, it's pretty much exactly how I'd want a frequency response to sound like. So at some point, I decided to just go ahead and buy it, and went through the challenging ordering process to order it, and ended up originally just buying the universal version, just because if I didn't like it, I could sell it again. And also, it comes in 4 different options of tuning. There's 2 switches on it with 4 different options. And because I hadn't listened to it before, I ended up just buying the version that came with all the tunings. So that's the reference model. And yeah, so I ended up getting it. It took about 4 weeks or so to get the whole process going, and got it. Really liked 2 of the tunings, and ended up deciding to get a custom version. So that's being built right now.
Which one did you end up getting for the custom version?
I ended up picking the B version, which is basically the stock version with about 5 dB bass shelf.
Right. So you actually bought it direct from Hidition.
Yep.
And first you bought the Universal R, and then now you're buying a custom B. So, again, I am very against blind buying things, and you obviously know you do your own measurements and you know what you're talking about. So I think it's kind of I'm still against it, and every time somebody told me that they're thinking about buying a Viento in DNA, I'm like, oh, not again. We're doing this again. But I feel like you are a little bit different, and honestly, the price tag isn't really an issue for you for any of that sense. But like, what do you like about it? I mean, now obviously you like it enough to buy another one, and to obviously you might just sell your R a little bit later. We don't know what you're gonna do yet. So like, what do you love about it?
Yeah, so I wrote a review about it about a month and a half ago on the universal version. Uh, I think the biggest thing I liked about it was that it had probably the best coherency I've ever heard on an IEM, and I haven't heard a lot like everyone else maybe in this on this podcast here. But as far as what I've listened to, I think it's the most coherent, and it produces a pretty natural sound for being a multi BA while keeping pretty good resolution and imaging. Lately, I've been listening to a lot more symphonies and jazz music and a lot of bluegrass lately. So it's a lot of acoustic music, and I think that plays to the strength of the Viento, where you get a lot of really good imaging and instrument separation, and the way it measures it provides a good balance of bass and treble, so everything's kind of on a even playing field. It does emphasize a little bit more in the upper harmonics, but and then the universal actually has a additional treble gain just because you're not getting the deep fit that you would expect in a custom. But it actually ends up
Yeah.
sounding pretty good for that type of music because it gives it a little bit more of a airy soundstage. So for the current music I'm listening to, it's pretty good. Normally, I guess in the past I'd listen to a lot more rock music and that type of stuff. It doesn't work as well for those type of genres, but with the B version, there's a slight bass boost, which does help make it a good all arounder.
Is not good for J-pop and K-pops. Is that what you're telling me?
I so one day a couple weeks ago I was asked to listen to, or a few people tried to get me to listen to a bunch of K-pop and J-pop music, and I happened to have the Viento and the Utopia with me at the time, and those two do not play well with that type of music. I would not recommend it.
I'm glad you touched up on the frequency response, and I know that Corn loves to talk about curves. And tell me why DF tuning is one of the worst tuning in the world, Corn.
It doesn't have bass. Like that's about it. That doesn't have bass, and it's super thin and lean. And well, music is mastered in like actual reference speaker rooms, but in DF environments are very vibrant, but they don't have any reflection. So the bass response in a DF type environment is super minimal, which is highly unrealistic for modern day music.
But the B version is it's a little bit better, right? Because it has that little bit more of a bass boost on the Viento B, right?
Yeah, I agree. Like for me, the B tuning is the best tuning where if you go to the D tuning where it activates both the bass and the lower mid switch, the D tuning is a bit bloated sounding slightly compared to the B. Yeah, so I do prefer the cleanliness of the B tuning. I would say the bass is present, but it's not overdone at all in any capacity or sense.
Right, and I think you love to talk about peanut gain, and that's actually one of my big gripes with the DF tuning, and even for the Viento as well, with the 10 dB peanut gain is that, and you actually do like to criticize that as well when you yourself said 10 dB is way too much, isn't that correct?
Yeah, honestly, I do agree that 10 dB is way too much. Like on the Viento, no matter what setting you go for, A, B, C, D, or yeah, the it sounds thin. Like no matter what setting you go for, even if setting D. So I do think is that it's a little bit too much gain on the 3K vision. I'll perhaps dial it down by 2 dB or so. But it does get better in a custom fit. In terms of the intensity of treble as well as the overall thickness in the note.
Right, and I have heard that, going to Ken, and I have heard that, the custom unit will be better than the universal, but I think it's kind of silly for us to like saying that, oh, you have to listen to Viento in a custom form to get it. But like when you demo the unit, of course, obviously you have to demo a universal unit. Is that something that you should be like willing to risk? It's again like it's with the cheapest variation, it's still $900. Well,
Yeah, so to demo it properly, you need to use the smallest tip that you can seal and get the deepest fit possible. Then that will be the closest and the intended tuning. Because for Hidition, a lot of their models are tuned for custom. They are designed from scratch as custom. So other than a couple of models that are designed as universal, most of them are designed for custom. So you do need a very deep seal to get the intended sound. Now, if you have problems with the universal, the custom is not going to solve it. If you like it in universal, then custom will be better for you. It's one of those things. So though I don't recommend people to get custom to fix the issue, but if it's good for you, then it's probably better for you in custom form. And going back to what Con said about the mids, so for me, the default tuning, yes, it is thin. The mids are thin. There's too much energy in the lower treble for me, and that may create sibilance at times, or a bit more intense than I would like to. But with the D switch or the C switch up, the issue is with the congestion. So imaging takes a hit. I think that's a pretty big problem for the Viento, where it excels in orchestra, but when you have the mids switch up, the imaging will take a hit, and that's not good for orchestra.
The DF tuning, obviously it does, some you guys would want to call it thin, and some people want to call it airy, right? It's just that, whatever words that you want to use, and I'm getting the fact that this tuning is obviously maybe not the best for for popular music, and is it going to you again? Is it a all-rounder, like if you just get one of the 4 tuning?
It depends on the genre you listen to, I guess. All rounder, it is still designed as an all rounder, but a single tuning may be more limiting. But well, I mean, if you do get a single tuning, you must love that tuning for everything, right? So I mean, I guess for me, if I have to choose one tuning, I'll guess I'll take the B, because the D is not great for orchestra, because it does kill a lot of imaging and congestion. Yeah, the keyword is congestion. But if you're not listening to complex stuff like your genre, your music do not go hard on imaging, and you just maybe like vocals and very, very simple staging, then and you want a slightly thicker vocal. So even with the mid switch up, it is still relatively thin, but it's all right. And yeah, like if you do not need that hard imaging, then well, the C or D may work. But as Con mentioned, the default A simply does not have enough bass for most general modern music. But if you're talking about specific genre, yes, the A definitely has the most the cleanest sound.
Right, and I think this is one of the few IEMs, from what I've heard, that actually have a very useful switch options. As opposed to I am notoriously known for hating switches on my Gemini that I used to have in my VX that I have right now. Well, why don't we go back to Anthony? What do you say about those, like, thin vocals? Is that something that and the obviously choice of you going to B, and I think that's everybody's favorite option. Why don't you just get a custom R? What's the decision there?
Yeah, that's a good
Anthony?
question. So I agree that so I tried with the reference universal, the C and D switches, which add more bass, or add more mids to it. It just didn't sound right. If you look at the measurement, it actually looks pretty good. But I think just because the way BAs behave, balanced armatures. It just doesn't sound very good. It ruins everything that makes the Viento special to me, which I think Ken already mentioned, that it's imaging and soundstage and instrument separation, all that. So I end up picking the B custom just because I end up using that the most when I use the universal. Right now, it's currently just it stayed on B for last month or so. I was debating between getting A or B, and that was based on the type of music I was listening to at the time. But I ended up going with B just because it gives me a little bit more versatility. And since I'm getting a custom, it's going to be with me forever. So having that kind of assurance that it works for a little bit more than just one type of music, gives me that confidence that I'm making a good decision. Going back to like a comment earlier made that was about not blind buying and expecting a universal to sound like a custom. One of the nice benefits that we have with measurements that are available was I did take my own measurements of the universal, and to try to figure out if I like the custom sound, I end up EQing down the additional difference in the 5 to 8K region between the universal fit and the custom, one person's custom fit, and try to see if I like that sound. And it doesn't. It sounded better to me with the or the EQ'd to custom sound. So that also gave me confidence to go ahead and blind buy a custom.
How about this? Like, I'm sure like nobody really had the $1,400 like you to drop the blind buy the Viento art in the first place. For you, Anthony, what is, and you actually wrote an article about the DF tuning, about the Edamode, the XR line. To you, what is like a cheap IEM people can get to get a sense of whether or not they will like the tuning on the Viento?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a couple I would recommend. Below $100, it's your favorite, the Tin Hi-Fi T2.
No.
That one has a pretty good Edimodics or DF type tuning at about $50. What you're missing there, it doesn't have the imaging or soundstage or resolution that the Hidition will have. It's also double dynamic, so you gotta take that into account as well. The closest one that's gonna sound to it would probably be the Edimodic ER3 or the ER4 series. The main differences that I've heard, and I have them, the main difference I have heard between the two is primarily you're going to get a lot better imaging, bigger soundstage, both wide and deep, better layering, just basically everything technical is going to be improved on it, including better resolution too.
Right, and it's on a DF tuning, people do think about Edimodic or a lot of the other like DF type sound, like maybe KSC, maybe like EX1000, but those are not a little bit less DF, and obviously it's more like a glorified Edimodic with 4BA. And on the subject of like all-rounders, and I know you haven't heard the M9, but we love to bring it up because it's mid-fi. What is the comparison there, Korn? Like, is that some like comparison between like an all-rounder, ish, versus M9 versus the Viento?
Well, yeah, I'll describe both as an all-rounder, but in some sense, both are like they are worlds apart in terms of tuning, where the Viento tends to sound brighter, but the M9, if you put it next to Viento, it would sound rolled off in terms of its lower treble. So the Viento has much more upper mid range energy compared to the M9. So the M9 does sound a little more laid back, a little more relaxed. I would say the Viento probably plays better with genres like jazz, whereas with M9, probably would do better with modern music like modern pop, hip hop, yeah, this sort of thing.
Have anything to add? You obviously like M9 a lot, obviously because you call it a mid fight.
Right. Yeah. So for M9, the mids are a lot fuller. It's a lot more complete. And of course, I didn't like the lower treble from the Viento sometimes because it can get too intense or too aggressive. Where like Concert M9 is a lot more relaxed and laid back there. So I prefer my music to be more relaxed. And talking about treble extension, M9 does not have any lack of treble extension as well. So it's very complete, and with a fuller mid, and I like the bass of MI too. Very textured for BA. So for me, all rounder, M9 is okay.
And I liked how you point out that maybe like that Viento upper mid range can be a little bit sharp. Wouldn't that be kind of a deal breaker for you? Because like I feel like some people are a little bit more sensitive in that range. Like for DF, I am actually a person. I heard etymonic before, and I find it very like, I wouldn't say like unbearable, but I find it very like unpleasant. Is it like that? That's a deal breaker for people, right?
Yeah, it can be. Like for me, it's a threshold. It's like some music are okay, some can be too intense. I mean, like one track is okay. If I'm gonna listen like 10 track back to back intense, then that's not too good an idea. Because the missing, I won't say missing, the lesser lower mids, that's making it thin, has additional effect, with the treble. But for the M9, because the mids are full, the lower mids are full, and the treble even is still quite substantial. It's just that there's a lot of mids to make it very even, very balanced, so to speak. So I don't get that jarring intensity sometimes, with certain tracks. It's not that Viento is always aggressive, but it really depends on the track. But for the things I prefer, M9 is more balanced for me.
And I'm not talking about, I'm sure, yes, it depends on what kind of music that you're listening to.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that it is, again, if you never heard anything that's more of a diffuse feel tuning, like I feel like this is something that people need to understand that, depends on what kind of genre that you're listening to. Like Viento can sound like a little bit more intense or a little bit more, aggressive or like, something that's more like, that's not like good for like a lot of listening, as opposed to maybe M9 with a better, like with a little bit more warmth. It kind of covers up the intensity of the IEM. And I think Corn loves to talk about shouty mids. Yeah, it's like, do you have like this, like, do you have this kind of problem with the upper mids on Viento, Corn?
I wouldn't say it's shouty, but just lean for me.
It's lean.
Yeah, it's lean and teen, but isn't shouty to me at least.
For me, it's shouty sometimes. It depends on the track. Like I do get shouty mids sometimes. Yeah.
Are we saying M9's a better blind buy?
But M9 is warm, so like I think I mentioned in the previous podcast, like the biggest deal breaker for M9 will be warm. If someone does not like warm, then M9 is not for them. But if someone likes warm, then M9 typically won't go wrong.
Are you gonna sell your Viento R and buy M9 now?
Me?
Yeah.
I actually may try to get a demo unit to listen to from a local person.
Maybe you should. Yeah, maybe you should. We can do our podcast on everybody's favorite mid-fi M9. And And moving on to the point that the reason why I like you so much, maybe not anymore now that you're getting two Vientos, that you actually have the best Viento before you bought the Viento R. You have the Viento X. Well, I'm just kidding. That's how I call his VX. And to contrast, the two IEMs that you have right now is two IEMs, both with switches with different kinds of tuning, and obviously Viento X is way better than your R. So could you talk a little bit about like it's two neutral IEMs with switches, um, and it's all BA. So what's the point of having the two there?
I actually don't find them similar, really at all, to be honest. Uh, the VX for me works really well. It actually works really well as an all arounder, probably way more so than the Viento. But the I actually don't like it. I don't like the VX for the types of music I like Viento for. Like I mentioned before, jazz music is my number one music I'm listening to right now, and I think the VX doesn't play as well with that for the way I like to listen to it anyway than the Viento. The VX is a lot better for the rock genres that I listen to a lot, but to me they're different flavors, and having the ability to listen to both for different things, I guess maximizes the music experience I get. It's a lot like for my headphones I have the Aria, which is like a kind of like a similar sound to the Viento, and then I have the Verite, which is a very colored, warm sounding headphone. And I'm not saying the VX is super warm, but it's, to me, the contrast is like that, where the VX is a bit warmer than the Viento.
And you want to maybe touch up on how those two compare in terms of technicalities or anything like that?
I think they're pretty similar in technicalities. I actually think the Viento's got a little bit better imaging and layering, and that might just be because of the way that sound is presented, where it doesn't have as warm of a lower mid range as the VX does. So to me, it sounds like it's more there's more depth to it and layering, but that I think they're pretty on par with each other. I think the VX does a little bit better resolution and just a little bit better at speed and agility, but I don't think the Viento's that far behind.
See, I have you here to tell Anthony that he's wrong. Tell him why the VX is so much better than Viento. Ken?
Yes.
Yes.
The VX to me is a lot. I mean, okay, to me it's a lot, but that a lot can be different to another person, right? So to me the imaging, the separation, the layering, especially is definitely more superior on the VX for me. And well, I do get better bass, so I like bass, so that wins me over. And for the fact that the Viento is thin, so the imaging and okay, like I think I mentioned in a previous podcast, like it's easier for a thinner sounding IEM to be more technical. Like it's hard for N9, which is warm, to be technical. So Viento is naturally supposed to be good with technicalities, but VX is able to give bass and technicalities and treble extension. It's a very complete package. However, VX is, I would say, to most, for quite a lot of music, will be less neutral than Viento. But I like VX more because I like colored sound, so that's my preference.
supposed to tell him that he's wrong, and you're supposed to like yell at him. But I'm just kidding. And and going back to Corn, because he loves to talk about drivers, and this is from what I've gathered, the Viento only have like 4 BA per side, and they use very old nose drivers. And obviously it's not a very new IEM. It's been around the market for at least 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, 6 actually.
6 years,
Yeah.
and so you wanna like what's the magic sauce here, man? Like four BA, and you tell people, and they all they talk about is like, oh, it's, and I am guilty of this as well. It's 4 BA. How good can it sound? And it's also a very old IEM. Like
Uh-huh.
what's the magic here? You want to tell me about that?
Okay, well, back in 2014, when Viento was released, there wasn't a lot of a 4-driver 4-way kind of configuration. So in the past, manufacturers would just throw on a resistor and a capacitor on the tweeter of an IEM. So they high pass the tweeters, and then they just throw on a full range like a woofer onto the IEM. So Viento, every single driver of Viento is crossed in some way, which makes it and it's time it stands out as being like they're using every driver effectively, where they're maximizing the potential by limiting the range in which you can play. Yeah, so it is a 4BA 4-way IEM. It does use a CI driver, which is super common even in today's age. Uses the classic ED 29689, I believe, as well as the WBHC or the low mids, upper mids range, as well as the WBFK tweeter. Honestly, there isn't anything super special about it, but it is the way that Hidition tuned it to achieve such a, in some sense, a very pleasant response, like just on graph, like the rise from 1000 hertz all the way to about 3000 hertz. It is one straight line, and that in that one straight line, it is actually made out of 2 drivers, the ED as well as the WBHC, where the WBHC peaks at around 2K, and then the ED peaks at 3. So they made the ED peak at 3 such that it in a sense comb up the frequency response to be a straight line from sorry, not a straight line, but a nice kind of rise from 1K to 3K. So that was the magic for its time. Yeah, it's quite impressive as to how they have like this kind of ideas to tune the Viento, where in the past people would just take one driver and then let it handle the entire PINA region. But in the Viento, 2 drivers actually work together to form that beautiful kind of PINA gain on the Viento. Yeah, so that's the magic, I guess.
And you're doing, and there's not like those double like dual stack drivers in the Viento. They're all like single, like really big drivers. And like explain to me as if I'm 5. Obviously Knowles have like put out like better drivers like later, like after Viento's release. Like how is it just because like, and you have said there's nothing special about it. So is it just because of the tuning and like their engineering that it really was be able to keep up with the times? Because it is a very old IEM, and when you think about technology, that you will assume that it kind of once Nose released like better and new drivers, it kind of would fade with the time, and obviously that's not the case with Viento here, right?
Viento, I would say, is a lot of a very careful kind of consideration for the drivers that Hidition picks. Like they purposefully pick drivers that pick at a certain region so that they can create the PINA comp that they're looking out for. But PA tech is honestly super old. Like it's probably 50, 40 years old, and yeah, you can even find drivers on the market that goes all the way back to 1990. Nose does update these drivers from time to time, but a majority of these drivers are actually quite old. So even if the driver was released back in 2010, honestly, it is not such an old driver to the point of being obsolete in today's age.
This is more.
I would like to add. I think
Okay.
the 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 thing about Hidition or a good company for that matter is knowing how to utilize the drivers, not just blowing 20 drivers in and expect it to be good, but well execution and tuning of the drivers to squeeze out the maximum potential out of it. So I think for that I do have to give Hidition for making Viento very efficient, so to speak.
Right, and what I've gathered from you too, and saying that it's less really about the hardware on how many BA or what BA they use. I feel like is it more about just like the implementation of these drivers? Is that what I'm getting?
Yes.
Okay, and that's fair enough. But it is still quite expensive for what they are. Being in $900 for the one with a singular tuning and 1400 for the one with the switches and and Anthony, you wanna maybe like talk about like the ordering process for people that don't know how to order outside outside of Korea maybe or Singapore?
Yeah, so I can go over how my troubles with it. Basically, you go to hidition.co.kr. That's their main website, and then it's all in Korean. They actually have a button at the very bottom that says English, but it actually doesn't translate anything because most of their most of their website is actually just images, so it doesn't can't translate an image. So that didn't really help. But using Google Translator, you can kind of you can translate most of it over to English, and you can understand it. So what I ended up doing was trying to use your standard add to cart process, and that really got me nowhere. You get to a point where you can add to cart and try to order, and then it gets super confusing because it asks you to select a bank, and then you're supposed to load a web app to transfer money from your bank to that, and that didn't work at all. So I resorted to just sending them an email and trying to figure out how to use their website, and they ended up just saying, "Hey, we can just do this by email," and as long as you use clear English words, because I think they understand some English, but they probably use a translator app to convert English over to Korean. So as long as you use clear, defined sentences, I think you can get by just going through email. And so after that, the process was pretty easy. We exchanged a bunch of emails trying to figure out what the configuration I wanted, the any artwork I wanted on it, or the color of the shells I want, and then he came up with a little PDF invoice with the location to wire money to. So you do have to do a wire transfer. There's no there's no credit card or PayPal or Venmo or any of that. So you do have to go through the old school wiring process. So there is a fee attached to that based on what bank you use, but that takes up to a week to transfer over based on how many banks the wire has to go through. In my case, from HSBC to there, it took about 3 days. And then they confirm it, and then he sends you an email saying, "Hey, we got the money, and we're gonna start building your IEM." And then it takes 3 to 4 weeks or so, at least when I've built the first one, to get the confirmation that they finished and they're shipping it out. It does become a little bit more, there's a couple added steps if you try to go with a custom version, which, you have to get impressions built, and then he prefers that you take pictures of the impression and make sure that it matches what they want. So the first time I did it, I sent the impressions over, and there was like one little small defect in it. and he rejected it. So the second time, I made sure we had pictures made available to him, and he approved them, and I sent them over, and there was no issues the second time.
So obviously it's kind of like a painful process for you, and their build time is around like what 2 or 3 weeks, and now you have your Viento R, and you're ordering again, and that wiring transfer process is definitely a really something that just a lot of hoops that you have to jump through. Is is that something that you would recommend people doing, like in the States, just to like going through all that trouble just to get a Viento?
Yeah, this goes back to the whole blind buying and
Right,
all of that. So
right.
yeah, I mean, one, it's blind buying, so I don't recommend that unless you really know what you're gonna get, or
You
unless you
gotta
have the
practice what
ability.
you preach, Anthony. You gotta practice
Yeah,
what you preach
I'm not
first.
good at that, but so there are people. I mean, in my case, I have at least some knowledge of how to read a graph, and then I also have people who are in Southeast Asia, like our two co-hosts here, and other people in that circle who have Devanto or have listened to it, and people that I trust their opinions on, based on the type of music and what other gear that they have. And we have some people like Irvo, shout out to him. He has a lot of the same gear that I have and same music taste. So, and he owns a Viento as well. So that gave me the extra confidence that I'm not making a poor decision. But for most people, yeah, it's a lot of work. You're trusting, first buying something that you never heard before. It's not cheap either. Even the single Switch version is still gonna cost you $900 to $1,000 or even more, depending on what artwork you add to it. And then you have to deal with the wire transferring process, which isn't as secure and safe as going through PayPal or using your credit card, because there's no insurance. Once you press submit, it goes through, and there's no turning around anymore. And if you type in one number wrong, you're kind of hosed. So there's a lot of risk. Don't necessarily think it's best for everyone, but if you're confident, then I guess more power to you.
That's not the message that we should be sending here. So what is the play here? Like, is it actually safer to just get a ER4 XR first, just to see how, if you like that sound signature at all, before you have ever heard Viento? And if you don't like that sound signature, it really should be a deal breaker. But ER4 XR is already $300, but that is
Yeah.
still the safer play.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a much better way of at least trying out, seeing if you like it. I've owned the Etymotic series over the years, and I currently have a couple of them with me now. And I actually ended up rebuying the ER4 XR and the ER3 XR, based on looking at the measurements and comparing them to the Viento, just to I guess readjust myself, see if I like that sound or not. And it wasn't. I guess the ER3 isn't super expensive. It's between $130 and $150. So having that available, you can kind of hear if you like the sound profile or not, and that's a good starting point.
If you ask me, maybe we should just get the M9, right, Corn?
Yeah, pretty much.
There you go. Thank you for agreeing with me, Ken. Anything to add?
I mean, for me, definitely, I prefer the M9 over the Viento, because like the ER series, as well, is well tuned, is good, but it's not a sound signature I prefer. So it's something that hey, like when people are starting out, like get them to try, especially the ER2 XR. Like that's just very very nice, very very good budget, affordable DD, and yeah, those are things I can recommend people. But but if they are experienced and they know what they're looking for, and if they're looking for this DF tuning, okay, that's something to try. I can recommend them to I mean, in Singapore we get a try, right? So like, hey, try the Viento. But for me, I know M9. That's my my preference. Simply because Viento doesn't have the few things that I'm looking for.
Does anybody have anything to add when it comes to like maybe just for the people that's doesn't have access to like demoing that much, to like how maybe like what might be better, like, or just prepare you for to get a better grasp of how Viento would sound like, or just have some better suggestion in terms of like just just throwing $900 out there in the open. Is it like, I'm sure there's like better ways.
ER4 XR will be the closest,
Okay.
as Ann said. So
And so I guess is that the consensus, that this is the play here? You find a used ER4 XR and just to see like if you like that sound signature, and if you do, and more than likely you will like Viento.
yeah, because Viento is ER4 XR on steroids, basically with treble extension. So if you like ER4 XR and you like more technicalities, and treble extension, sure, that's a good direction. But if you try ER4 and like, nah, that's not your thing, then unlikely Viento will do magic for you. Yeah.
I do want to
I guess you
add.
could also throw on I guess you could also throw on a base shelf on the ER4, further emulate the Viento B setting.
Yes.
Yeah, I do want to add. I actually don't like the ER4 XR. I actually think it's a little too shouty, and I think Korn was trying to get to that point. The B setting of the Viento has a bigger bass shelf than the ER4 XR does, and I think that balances out the gain between 1 and 3K on the Viento and the 4XR. So to me, the 4XR was a little fatiguing, actually. It's going to be very comparable to the Viento A setting, and they actually almost look identical if you look at the graphs. So take that into consideration as well.
If you ask me, just skip mid-fi. Everybody should just get a VX. But that and I'm always right. Anybody else have anything to say about our favorite Korean 5 KR5 of the month?
I think Con has something to add on the driver age and stuff.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Sorry, I missed it out just now. Yeah, looking at it, the driver spec sheets say that the oldest drivers that the Viento uses comes from it dates back to 2006, so that's 14 years ago. Yeah, so I guess it is a testament to as to how good sound is good sound, and like technology doesn't really matter, like if it's relevant.
Yes.
It's like, yes, for drivers that old, and of course the IEM is old, it is good, and it is still good today. But of course, there are a lot of improvement done to the new IEMs, and they stand a better chance. So it's not that Viento is bad now. It's just it's no longer king of the hill, but it's no pushover either. It is still putting up a very good fight in comparing against the top dogs these days.
Well, it's first of all, it's a very old IEM, and second of all, it's not even their flagship.
Yeah,
and it's not even their flagship. It's not even their second best, like the second most expensive, right? It's not even their third most expensive. It's actually one of their cheaper offerings, right? If I'm correct me if I'm wrong, because NT6 and NT8s are actually more expensive,
right?
Than Viento, and they also have a recently flagship called the Violet. That's about 2.6 grand American dollars. And that's probably a podcast for a different time. But if you do like Hidition, I think that the moral of the story is everybody should just go get a violet.
I like the violet.
Well, I mean, of course, I think you're probably one of the few people that does, and I do want to try. But anybody else have anything to add? But if not, we're just gonna cut it here.